and I'm able to talk about it.
Well, how often do you cry?
I mean, not all the time, but
every day?
No, not every day, Piers. I cried yesterday.
2 or 3 times
I probably
a week?
haven't cried for about 3 weeks before that. But honestly, my therapist tells me I need to cry, and it's a good relief.
But the point being, Andrew hasn't cried in 10 years.
I think that is such a weakness, Andrew, that you haven't cried in a decade. Like, that's crazy to me.
My therapist told me I could cry.
I'm so worried about you. I can't understand. Well, you're crying now. I'm pleased I happily facilitated that for you.
I think we're seeing the two extremes that Tomi was talking about.
It's honestly, yeah, Tomi, you're so...
Andrew Wilson demolishes woke idiot James Barr and covert feminist Tomi Lahren on Piers Morgan. These people have a keen ability to hold contradictory beliefs at the same time, and it always amazes me. Andrew, on the other hand, is having none of it. Let's dive in.
Look, I've got 3 sons, 31, 27, 24. I think I brought them up to respect women, to not behave in a misogynist way, and to behave in a pretty decent way generally. But I'm also aware that they've grown up in an era when the likes of Andrew Tate and others have become increasingly dominant in the way that a lot of impressionable young men start to think and view women. And for all that Andrew Tate can say that is positive about getting fit and being successful and confident and so on, there's indisputably a hardcore streak of misogyny that runs through his veins, which I think has been quite damaging to young men. So I'm not all in either way here, but I can certainly see the arguments. Where do you sit?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that so I watched the show, and it just goes through a typical feminine view, right? So all of these things are always through the prism of the feminine. So young boys, they don't do well in school. They don't do well in school because it's all programmed for the feminine. Stay still, fold your hands, right? Be quiet. Boys are rambunctious. They like to beat each other up. They like to be mischievous. They like to break things. They like to do that kind of stuff. There's no outlet for them to do that stuff. Their teachers are all women, right? There's basically all masculinity is now considered toxic, basically all of it. The same women who are getting their double shot of espresso on the way over to the school they're about to teach at, they're 24 years old. Sometimes they're banging their own students, right? Hilariously enough. And then these people go out to Parliament. The same women will go to Parliament. They vote to send men off to war to stab each other in the face with bayonets. And you're concerned about toxic masculinity. It cracks me up. It's like the brutal savagery of men is a necessary precondition for society to exist. And we just kind of pretend like it's not. And this show should actually be an indictment on the feminine rather than the masculine, because basically masculinity is just punished everywhere all the time, nonstop. It's no wonder guys like Andrew Tate get so famous in these spaces. I mean, what's the alternative? The alternative is everything must be feminine, tone policing, nonsense like this. It's ridiculous.
All right, James Barr, you were laughing, but I don't think you had a joy
crazy.
what you're hearing.
No, I mean, I don't think you've seen the show. Episode 2 is shot entirely in a school. I didn't see one of the female teachers drinking a double shot of espresso at all. None of the teachers were flirting with students. There were male teachers as well. I don't think you're describing the show here. I think you're describing your own insecurities or agenda.
No, bro. What Andrew is describing is the reality we have been forced to live through in the West. From the day boys are born, they have masculinity socially engineered out of them, whether it be from sewing circle moms or the very education system. Like Andrew said, masculinity is actually demonized and attacked, so much so that they have created some fake disorder called ADHD, when in reality it has to do with the female-centric environment they're putting boys into. And then they have started medicating boys with Adderall and other ADHD meds to pacify them and turn them into obedient units to be worked until they die or turn into disposable weapons of war. It's all in their utility. And then women have the right to use them as such, voting to send them to war to fight for whatever agenda these women have. Think about it. There are more voting age women than men in the US. If all women voted to send all men to go fight Russia because they're meanies, could they do it? They could. That is our democracy. There is nothing stopping women from forming a bloc and voting in anything they want. The only thing standing in the way of total degeneracy and corporate power is masculine men, good men. And that is why they needed to utterly destroy it to create this new fake Rainbow Skittles world that we live in. because men, grounded in objective truth, masculine men, would have never allowed this to happen.
Yeah, so this doesn't contend with the argument. Like, do you understand that I'm making an argument, an indictment of society itself, based around my ideas that I'm seeing from this show? That's what I'm actually doing. So if you could contend with the fact that male savagery is necessary for the security of a nation, and that women will indeed vote in the future in parliaments to send men off to war to stab each other in the face at 18 years old with bayonets, perhaps you can contend with that before we start, getting into, well, tone policing is actually good and toxic masculinity is actually bad. It's like, I think there needs to be a little bit more toxic masculinity, or what you consider to be toxic masculinity.
Well, great. Good for you.
Nothing.
I'm glad you think so.
Nothing.
No, I mean, I just don't need to argue with that, because
You just stun-locked? You just stun-locked? You got nothing?
You're making up
You
an
do
agenda
seem
that
unusually
I've not said
muted by that,
I've not
James.
said anything. I haven't literally said nothing about
James,
toxic
you were literally
masculinity
rendered
at
silent.
all,
Like,
because
you had no way of responding.
I'll tell you what, you can't argue with a completely illogical argument that has, like, I've not made any of the
It's a
comments
logical argument. You may not agree with it.
I've not made any of the
He's making a perfectly
comments
logical argument.
that you are firing at me. None of those comments are things I've said or believe in.
All right, I want to bring Tomi in, because Tomi, you've got a very interesting perspective, I think. You've talked about something different. You call it the pussification of men, which is a great phrase. I'd love you to just explain what you mean by that. But also, you're not a fan of Andrew Tate or the influence he has. So that makes you, I think, an interesting commentator in this area. So just explain, first of all, the pussification of men.
All right, Piers. Well, I think, and I can't see you all, so forgive me if I'm incorrect here, but I think I'm the only female on this panel.
Correct.
So I'm really anxious to weigh in. Okay, so I think over the last probably 10 years, there has been what I call the pussification of men. It was everything should be about your emotions and your feelings, and men were emasculated, and this whole concept of toxic masculinity warped the minds of a lot of young men, and they felt masculine, they wanted to be masculine, but society was telling them they should be softer, that it was being toxically masculine if you wanted to play sports and chop wood and go to war. And so men were so emasculated and so beat down that then there was this revolution of what was actually toxic masculinity, the Tate brothers and others, which I feel as a female that doesn't represent true masculinity. That to me represents douchebaggery. And as a woman, I want a strong man who is a protector and a provider, that will go to war if need be, that will protect me, protect my family, make money. I see that as being actually masculine. That's like the man that I grew up with, my dad. But what we're seeing now is these young men who look at Andrew Tate and the Tate brothers, and they see somebody who's just quite frankly a douchebag and disrespects women. And because they've been so emasculated, they're like, oh, great, that's a manly man. But that's not right either. So at some point, I think we'll go back to maybe meeting in the middle here. You can be a man who has feelings and emotions, but you can also go to war and protect and defend your family. I'm hoping we can get back there. But the two extremes right now, they're confusing men, and quite frankly, they're leaving women with few choices. And that's the real tragedy here.
Now, despite her being a complete feminist, well, maybe not, maybe she's just selfish, which is feminist, so never mind. She isn't traditional or feminine. She just wants men to take care of her, buy her shit, and worship her. Regardless of that, she is kind of right. Men were completely ostracized and emasculated, and people like the Tates, Jordan Peterson, kind of gave men the permission to be men, to be rambunctious, to be masculine, something that had been conditioned into them to be wrong for their entire lives, causing a cognitive dissonance. And now here these guys are, not giving a fuck, and fighting back against a culture that told men they were flawed from birth. And that is what felt good. Now, I agree a lot of these guys, a lot of the manosphere or red pill guys, don't really have an ultimate grounding or a teleology, if you will, for this new ideology they have been given. And that's exactly what the red pill movement is. Red pill is a description of the natural reality we live in. It's the is, but the ought is the issue. Instead of men returning to the ethics or virtues of classical philosophy, or better yet, Christianity, they moved into this narcissistic version of masculinity, which is a self-motivated will to power kind of ideology. It's kind of like taking the role of men in Christianity, but removing the morality, the good, the vertical axis, which is the guardrails and the goal, and replacing it with, well, hubris. And Andrew is about to explain the real reason why women are, in Tomi's words, left with few choices.
You see, I completely agree with you, but Andrew, you were shaking your head quite vigorously. Why?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just more feminine or feminist nonsense ultimately. And the covert feminism in society is big, especially on the conservative side. So here's what happens, right? Women need to have feminine virtues for men to be pursuing masculine virtues, for you to say things like, well, men, what I want is for men to protect me and I want men to make money. Well, that's great. What that ends up doing is it gives you a set of privilege in society. What do men get? What do men get for doing that for you? What are we getting from women for doing that? Are we getting chaste virgins on our wedding night? No, we're not getting chaste virgins on our wedding night. Are we getting women of great virtue? No, we're not getting women of great virtue. The idea of courtly love is supposed to be done for women of great virtue. Where are they? Well, they're nowhere. And so in modernity, in society, when female conservative influencers say this, it's actually a form of covert feminism. They're saying, I want privilege in society, right? But what is it women are giving to men to get it? What are they giving them? Tell me.
Well,
Can I please chime in here?
Yes, you can. And then James can, and then I'll come to you, Sean.
No, I would love to. I love this whole thing of like, if you're a female conservative and you don't believe that men should be douchebags, that all of a sudden you're a covert feminist. Call me a feminist. I really don't give one crap one way or another, but I can tell you this. A lot of these men, these podcast hosts on the right that like to think of themselves as these big masculine men and what am I getting out of it? I can tell you this.
There's that feminism.
All right, I believe I'm a woman of virtue, right?
Out.
Yeah, there's the feminism. Oh, and then you're interrupting me too,
Didn't
which
take
is great.
long,
I let
did
you
it?
talk.
Didn't
It's
take
my
long,
turn.
did it?
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you want to speak over a man?
Yeah, I don't
Are
care
you
if
a
you call me.
strong,
I don't
independent
really
woman?
care if you call me a
strong,
feminist.
independent woman.
Yeah. Yeah. You're actually interrupting me. I didn't interrupt you when you were spewing your bullshit. So now it's my turn. Okay.
You mean
so,
the truth?
Like I said before. So I believe there we go again. Piers, I'm a woman of virtue. I happen to be independently successful. I have a husband who's not only a former professional athlete, but is currently a professional baseball coach. So is he not a masculine man? I mean, I'm confused here. What's your concept of a masculine man? Mine is a man who respects me.
Yeah, that misses the point, though. Like, you're still not contending with the argument that I'm making.
What's your point?
I'm saying inside of society, right this second, right, masculinity is not only punished, but also women on the right, covert feminists on the right, are constantly and consistently talking about how they need to have privilege in society. I want men. Their version of masculinity is men who take care of us, men who protect us, men who do all of this. Those are all duties that men have towards women. Great. What are the duties that women have towards men? What are the duties that women have towards anything? What do men get out of this arrangement? What are we getting out of this arrangement? Can you tell me?
I mean, as I was going to answer a second ago,
I don't want to interrupt you.
Hang on one second. Let Tomi
Most
respond.
men are born that
Let
way.
Tomi respond to that, and then I'll come to you, Jez. And then Sean, you've been waiting patiently. So
most men are born to be protectors and providers. I can't imagine my dad saying, you know what, to my mom, you know what, I'm not going to be a protector and a provider unless you do this. That's not how real men operate. Real men are protectors and providers, and they marry women who hopefully have some virtue, but also bring a lot to the table as well, that are great mothers, great wives, caretakers of the home. There's nothing wrong with being a traditional wife and mother. You're misunderstanding me if you think that I think that women should just be out doing whatever they want. I think that there are gender roles that should be respected. But I don't think a man needs to get something out of it to be a manly man, a protector and a provider. If you think you need to get something out of it, I quite frankly don't consider you a real man.
Such a low IQ, selfish response to say that I've never heard my dad say he needed something from my mom to be a man, to protect and provide. And anyone who does isn't a real man. Well, that just shows a clear lack of understanding in human nature. Everybody does things for things in return. Every single person and everything they do. Even Aristotle says man does something based on a perceived good. Even people doing evil believe it will bring them some perceived good, like pleasure, power, or money. So a man will work his ass off, sacrifice his body and time in order to provide for a good woman, who will provide him in return with children, a home, a legacy, and peace in his life. If men aren't getting that, why would they put themselves through all of that pain and suffering just so they can make women feel good and pay for their Versace bags? Get the fuck out of here, bro. And then to try and claim that none of them are real men unless they are born with some inherent desire to simp over women, work tirelessly, and then give them all of their money and be happy about it is fucking crazy. Like, no matter how women act, how they treat men are meant to bend the knee and submit to them. No, seriously, that's actually what they want and how they see it. They want men to feel like the leader, but in reality, women control when the man is allowed to lead or not. And that's not leadership. That's being a pop-up. That's being a puppet, a sports coat.
Yeah, so you have nothing. So you have nothing.
But we'll
No women
discuss
have
in a
no
moment
duties,
whether
nothing.
Andrew
There's no
Wilson is a
privilege.
real man.
Piers,
let's
I
go to-
offer nothing. I offer nothing.
You offer
didn't
me
offer a
a lot
single
of
argument.
things, Tommy.
No.
That's why I always love having you on the show. You know that. Let's go to a real man, James Barr.
Thank you. I do see myself as a man, and I know that you were looking at me thinking, well, you're not. You're wearing makeup. You're wearing colourful clothes. Like, look at me. I'm really camp. My nails are
I
painted.
mean, they are worrying
But,
signs. I
you're
agree.
sat there smoking a cigarette. I'd love to get a vape out and start drinking a beer. Pints with the lads. Just connect with you over that. I think that you have some insane opinions on what women are meant to do for you. It's crazy that you don't appreciate that a woman actually gave birth to you. Like, she gave you a womb for 9 months and then looked after you, I would hope, for the beginning of your life. And you're sat there going, what do women owe men? Women don't owe men anything.
So he just said a bunch of feminine shit with his nails painted while claiming to be a man. That's because this is subversion. He subverts and inverts what is meant to be a man and then propagates that, which in turn corrupts the image of a man for mostly the youth, but anyone who doesn't have a firm framework for masculinity already will receive this corrupted image of a man from this guy. Like the saying goes, a man who stands for nothing will fall for anything.
No one owes you anything. You have your own
Okay,
life.
do you understand that if you make an argument and you say that
I'd
women are
watch
supposed
your
to be
seminar on how to win an
in a
argument.
position, if women are supposed to be in a position of privilege where men do A, B, C, and D for them, and then I ask, well, what duties do women have? And you say, well, nothing.
No one said
right?
that
And then you
men
wonder,
need-
why are men
personally,
checking out? I don't know why men are checking out. I don't get it.
You just
That's
sound so
silly, man.
funny.
All right,
That's
let
a
me bring
silly
in.
argument.
All right, let me bring in the one person who so far hasn't said a word about this, but has a lot of interesting things to say. Sean, welcome to Uncensored. I mean, I think one of the key things of this series that's made it so popular is that anyone who's had young sons knows that they are, if you're not careful, they get exposed to a lot of nasty stuff on the internet. We all know this. And a lot of it is this kind of incel stuff, which I think can be a really malevolent influence on impressionable young men. And they gravitate to it. And I think that partly what Andrew's getting at, I agree with, in the sense that following the Me Too Time's Up campaigns, which were in many ways, extremely laudable, brought down a lot of very bad men, no question of that. But the pendulum swung so wildly that I think a lot of young men in particular felt completely disenfranchised from society, felt like they're all being treated like a bunch of young Harvey Weinsteins unless they could prove otherwise. They didn't really know what the rules of engagement were with women, with teenage girls anymore, whatever. They lost their way. And by losing their way, they gravitated, I think, to very loud voices on the internet like Andrew Tate, who I think, like I say, he says a lot of stuff I find myself nodding to, and then he'll say this misogynist stuff, which I just despise it. I see no reason why you should ever want to have a relationship with a woman the way that Andrew Tate wants you to, where it's just pure misogyny. Just talk to me first of all about why you think young boys, teenage boys, young men, why they've gravitated to people like Tate. Because I have.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so I think it's, first of all, we got to understand that we have an amazing responsibility as a parent to lead from the home and to have these open conversations with our young children, all right? Whether they're male children, female children, we have to make sure that we're having open door conversations and we are tackling the hard subjects. Because if we don't take care of everything at home, we don't take care of everything in public, like at school, and other forces within society that help raise our children, we always say it takes a village. Well, it certainly does, but it starts at home. And if you cannot have these open conversations and allow your children to be honest and open with how they are feeling about society and the things that they are seeing, they are going to go to misogyny. They're going to go to the Andrew and Tristan Tates of the world, and they're going to learn how to be a man from that. And that is not what society needs. It's not what the world needs. That is not That is not masculinity. It is masquerading as misogyny.
How do we protect young men from the easy access at the moment there is to people like Tate? I mean, how do you actually put a ring fence around them so that you can tackle exactly what you've just said, but they're not also being dragged into that world?
It's tough because they're growing up in a world we never grew up in, Piers. We didn't grow up with the internet. We didn't grow up with Bumble, Tinder, Instagram, Facebook.
No, I was taught how to treat women by my mother, my grandmother.
Open the door,
my
right?
Aunts,
Open the door.
A lot of strong women in my family, very strong women, and they would just take no crap from the men. So that's the environment I grew up in.
Absolutely. So how do we insulate our children from this? By having conversations, putting parameters around the social media aspects of life, and having the conversations at home. Hey, son, hey, daughter, this is what you're going to see out there in the real world. This is what you're going to see on the internet. If you see something like this, that is not how a true man is supposed to act. And hey, that's not how a real man's supposed to treat you.
So this guy's right about a lot of what he's saying. The problem is that he's just saying shit that sounds good. Having a conversation with your kids about what they're going to see means absolutely nothing. If you say, this is how a man is supposed to be, but his teachers and his peers and the culture are telling him a completely different way that a man is supposed to be, then what? If you give them a moral framework and a worldview that has objective truth in it, then they will have the ability, nay, the freedom, to be able to discern right from wrong, good from bad, pick out propaganda, and not just what the teachers told him or what mom said is bad. How is a man supposed to treat a woman? How mommy and daddy treat each other? What about when mommy and daddy fight? Should he do that as well? No? Well, why? If he does, how should he do it? If he sees his friend smoking pot and he wants to join, why shouldn't he? I mean, there's ads up and down the street for marijuana. Why shouldn't he? His health? What if he doesn't care for his own health and prefers smoke to the air? What about if a girl wants to slob on his knob behind the bleachers? I mean, as boys, the culture, they say do it. There's no harm and there's consent. Why shouldn't he? These seem like stupid questions, but the worldview you instill in your children will dictate how they behave in these situations. But regardless, I still haven't heard anyone say what a woman's duty towards men is, or what they are even to society, or anything outside of themselves, really.
Right, so
we have to have the conversations.
Yeah, Andrew, do you intrinsically disagree with what you've just heard?
Yeah, I do. I think, again, all of this is always the burden on men. Burden on men. Burden on men. Men need to be doing this.
No, it's a family, Andrew. The family.
Hang on. Let me
finish. The family, Andrew.
Men need to
husband and wife.
Okay, yeah. So let me back up. Okay, again, men need to do this. Men need to do that. What I'm talking about is what duties do women have in society? What are the actual women's duties towards men? Everybody is raised from the time they're kids how we're supposed to treat women. We all know how to treat women. We never talk about how men are supposed to be treated. That's almost never discussed, especially by how women are supposed to treat men, what their duties in society are. This has been completely dispelled. Guys like Tate have risen because Christianity itself has become a feminized religion, especially the Protestant sects has become completely feminized. And it didn't used to punish masculinity at all. And now it does. And so where's the alternative? Where's the spiritual alternative? It's nowhere. And we need to get back to this fundamental question of what even is misogyny? Because I don't think that men kicking the crap out of each other, being brutes, insulting each other, hazing each other, even bullying each other is misogyny. Not only do I not think it's misogyny, I think it's perfectly healthy.
Yeah, but I don't think that's misogyny.
Well-adjusted.
Is that the argument?
But that is not misogyny.
Well, no, hang on. How women see this is tone
misogyny
policing.
is where you have a hatred or whatever you want to phrase it towards women. It's not about men treating men.
Sorry, toxic masculinity is what I'm referencing here, and toxic masculinity is what they're claiming leads to misogyny. So what I'm talking about is these are all masculine traits. There's nothing wrong with them, right? When you're talking about misogyny itself, I want to know what that even is. Is it just asserting yourself to women, telling women no, telling them no, that's bullshit?
No, I would say it's okay. Let me
telling
answer
them you're saying stupid things.
Andrew Tate says he's quite open about it. Women should stay at home. They shouldn't go out to work. They should do what he tells them. He's the king of the castle in his house. Blah 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 blah. That is misogyny. isn't it? You know, I've got a
That's
daughter.
not
I've got a
it's not
13-year-old daughter. I
misogyny.
don't want her thinking she can never leave the house. She's somebody's chattel.
It's not never leaving the house. Look, it is true that the world would be a better place if we didn't have it inverted and women did have a natural role at home and that was glorified and that there was government propaganda around the nuclear family and keeping women home. Why do you want to outsource the raising of children to strangers instead of your wife? That's a way better society. Why do you want your best and brightest women forced to go to a workplace instead of the best and brightest women staying at home raising their children? That's a way better system. It's always been a better system.
I guess we're talking freedom of choice.
That's not misogyny.
Women to do anything. It's freedom of choice. It's freedom of choice.
There is no such thing as freedom of choice. Hear me out. It's just another rhetorical talking point that sounds good in order to manipulate people. Think about it. Do you have the freedom of choice to go buy heroin up the street? Do you have the freedom of choice to stop a woman from killing your child? Do you have the freedom of choice to go build a house in the woods and hunt the land with your dog and live peacefully? No, bro. It's freedom of choice until someone chooses something you don't like or you choose something illegal. It's freedom of choice as long as it aligns with your preferred outcome. Listen, we have laws that limit people's choice on almost everything. So like I said, it's just another talking point that sounds good when in reality, in practice, it means nothing.
I love the fact that my wife's out there working, teaching kids and building adolescents. I love that. And to your point about what do I get from a woman? I have a home. I have 3 beautiful children. I have communication in the house. And to me, that means more than anything. Like, I don't understand where I'm not saying you're wrong in your world, but to sit there and say to a woman, what do I get out of this woman? That's treating her like an object.
One thing I want to play a clip.
Okay, so it's okay to treat men like objects, give them duties,
I
but
don't
you're not
feel
allowed
like
to
an
give
object.
women duties.
I feel respected.
Okay,
in my
well, let me
home.
ask you this.
I'm not
How
angry
come it is
about
in the United States that men can be drafted? Women can't be drafted, but women can vote to send men to war. 18 years old, they're stabbing each other in the face with bayonets. Women can vote to send men to war that they then themselves do not have to fight. It's a duty that men have, they do not have. What's the counter duty for women? There's no obligation for women to have children, well under replacement rate. It's slated 45% of women will be single in the next 10 years, up to 60% in the next 30. That's the estimates right now. Our replacement rate, we can't even replace our own country's birth rates. That's how low they are.
Maybe
this is what we're seeing as a systemic issue inside of society because nobody will put duties on women.
Go on,
Instead,
James.
you just
Maybe it's men like you that are making that
Maybe that's why
happen.
the
Maybe you're the problem.
rate is low.
Yeah,
Women don't
it's
men are the
crazy to me
problem.
as well that you are
Exactly.
just
There we
sat
go.
here.
Don't talk over each other. Let James speak.
I can't understand why you are sat there confidently thinking of yourself as a victim constantly. You have a platform and you're sat here like, I'm a victim. What are women doing for me? What happened in your childhood that has made you so traumatized?
Man, these freaking people just immediately try to paint you as flawed or defective anytime you don't agree with them. I'm surprised that he hasn't called him a Nazi yet.
As an adult, that you cannot stand women succeeding. I'm so confused. I feel like the problem is not, and actually maybe this is our fault. Maybe this is the left's fault. Maybe this is modern society's fault for leaving people like you behind. But genuinely, we do not hate men, and toxic masculinity has been thrown around a lot. Ultimately, some of what you're saying is toxic, but that's not because you're a man. That's because you're an idiot.
All right.
Okay. So just to give you a quick rejoinder here, again, didn't contend with a single argument I made. You just said, why are you acting like a victim? While you're here talking about how women are
victims. You're not contending with arguments that other people are making.
It's wild to me. It's so wild to me.
You know this is Piers' show.
Let me play another clip.
You know this is Piers' show.
Let me go to Tommy. Tommy, I want to play you a clip. This is from a show called Newsnight on the BBC in the UK, where the host, Victoria Derbyshire, had a panel of young men on and asked them, when was the last time you cried? Let's watch this.
When was the last time you cried?
Honestly, the last time I cried, I couldn't tell you.
Same with Leo, I can't really remember the last time that I cried fully.
A lot of times I feel emotion and I look at myself, why can't I cry? We're told to suppress our emotions.
I feel like to guys, we may be treated a certain way that evokes an idea that we have to be extremely strong and upfront and here as a man, and I'm going to be composed at all times.
Now, I've got a slight issue with this, Tommy, in the sense that one of the most devastating moments for me as a movie watcher was watching James Bond blubbing in the last Bond movie. Right? I don't think to prove you're a modern man, you need to be sobbing all the time. You know, I can't remember the last time I cried. It doesn't make me less of a man or less empathetic to people or anything. I just think again, the pendulum issue of what we want men to be. I think we're now trying to persuade a lot of young men, if you're not emoting all the time, then you're being suppressed in some way. We have over here the British stiff upper lip, which I think is a really bad rap. I think it's not a bad thing to actually not over-emote. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's...
Oh, sorry, Sean, I'll come to you.
Listen,
that was for Tomi. I'll come to you in a minute, Sean.
Oh, sorry, Tom.
For Tomi.
Sorry.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you at all, Piers. I don't think that men should be trained to be overly emotional and that should be a sign now of new maturity, being emotional. I don't agree with that. I don't think there's anything wrong with men crying in certain circumstances. Listen, everybody has a different journey. Everybody has a different set of circumstances. There are circumstances wherein men crying I have no issue with. It's also not up to me to tell a man when he can or cannot cry. I personally prefer the men in my life not to be overly emotional, but that's just a personal preference. Really, who am I to tell a man how he should exhibit his emotions? But again, I think that there is two sides here that are both too extreme. You've got the one hand that wants men to be feminine and cry and show their emotion and be weak. And then you've got the other side that says you cannot cry, you must always be strong, and you should look at women as an object. So again, there's got to be a happy medium here. I think there once was, but now because of, again, I agree, there was an overreaction of the feminist movement to make men weak. I don't agree with that either.
Yeah.
I just wish we could come to a place where there was a happy medium, where people could just be human beings who could have a gender role, but weren't married to that gender role in absoluteness. There's got to be a place for that. I would certainly hope.
Yeah. Andrew Wilson, when was the last time you cried?
When I had a death in my family.
And how long ago was that, if you don't mind me asking?
Many, many, many years. Many years. I don't know, maybe a decade, something like that.
Right. So you haven't shed a tear in a decade?
I don't think so, no.
Would you see it inherently as a weakness in a man to over-emote?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Men, listen, you don't want men to fall to pieces in crisis. You're the head of a family. You're the head of your household. And also you're the heads of nations. You have a moral obligation not to fall to pieces. In fact, I would say you're duty-bound not to. You need to be able to control your emotions, and you need to be able to attempt to control them at all times. It's not to say that you're not going to lose control. Nobody's perfect. But I think that the idea of the stoic man is a much better prospect for the idea of like this leftist that I'm arguing with next to me on the panel. I would not want to be that guy, that person who just cannot control their internal emotions. They can't do it. And unfortunately, again, this is through the viewpoint of the feminine prism that it's only through empathy, right? Empathy first. And it's like, no, it's not always about empathy. It's also about reason. It's also about logic. It's also about understanding that we live in a carnal world full of warring tribes who are always killing each other. And that's part of the human condition. You can't afford to have your men losing control to emotion or to empathy.
James, when was the last time you didn't cry on a date? Let's flip the question around.
I haven't cried today, but I did cry yesterday, and I think it's okay to cry. And it's funny that you keep trying to goad me and saying that I don't have control of my emotions. I think I have incredible control over my emotions because I know what's upsetting me and when.
So that is not emotional regulation. Knowing that Care Bears and Taylor Swift makes you cry and then being able to talk about your emotional breakdown doesn't constitute having control of your emotions. Being scared, nervous, angry, embarrassed, and being able to hold your composure and think rationally, that is controlling your emotions. Being able to act in a calm and decisive way in a high-stakes situation is necessary for anyone in a protector position. And like Piers said, we don't want a bunch of whiny men who break down at the first sight of trouble. We need men who can stand their ground in the face of a destructive and degenerate culture and not lose their cool. Not one step back.
And I'm able to talk about it.
Well, how often do you cry?
I mean, not all the time, but
every day?
No, not every day, Piers. I cried
Two or
yesterday.
three times
I probably
a week?
haven't cried for about 3 weeks before that. But honestly, my therapist tells me I need to cry, and it's a good relief.
But the point being, Andrew hasn't cried in 10 years.
I think that is such a weakness, Andrew, that you haven't cried in a decade. Like, that's crazy to me.
My therapist told me I could cry.
I'm so worried about you. I can't understand. Well, you're crying now, and please, I happily facilitated that for you.
I think we're seeing the two extremes that Tommy was talking about.
It's honestly, yeah, Tommy, you're so right. There's no nuance. I mean, it's difficult to have nuance on this show anyway, but we do need to find some in this debate.
I think the point is men should not feel they can never emote, but also they shouldn't be encouraged to believe if they're not constantly emoting. There's something wrong with them.
Well, of course, but also
that's where the pendulum's just gone too far.
You are also sort of guilty of this manosphere, Piers. You're very much in the manosphere yourself.
What do you think that means?
Well, it means that you think James Bond shouldn't cry, and that if he does, that's a weakness.
I want James Bond to
true.
be. I want him to seduce women,
which he
does.
does.
I want him to be a ruthless, steely-eyed dealer of death to bad guys.
But also,
I want him to have a cigarette with his whiskey or his shaken lobster martini.
Maybe Andrew is your type.
And I don't want him sobbing like a baby all the time. I don't.
Like Tommy might not.
Because guess what? When you're in Her Majesty's Secret Service, you don't have time to cry all the time.
Very sad news about Her Majesty, Piers. Sadly, she did pass away, and I'm sure you cried at that, which is completely
His Majesty
right.
now, obviously.
Tommy,
actually, the last Bond film was under Her Majesty, so I was correct.
Fine, great fact checking.
All right. So to wrap this all up, what you're seeing on this panel wasn't just an argument about a Netflix show or whether or not real men cry. It is a fundamental clash of worldviews. You have a modern, emotionally driven, narcissistic society that wants to emasculate men, medicate them, and then use them as disposable utility while giving them absolutely nothing in return. And on the flip side, you have the natural reality. That is the is. What is the is? The is that men are meant to lead. They are meant to be the patriarchs of their household, to protect and to provide. And in turn, women are meant to support their husbands and raise the family, the oikos. That is the baseline of natural reality. The objective stats prove this. Children have the absolute best outcomes when raised in a religious home by their biological mother and father. Period. That is the is. But recognizing the is isn't enough. The ought comes from how and why you do that. That's the trap a lot of these red pill guys fall into. If you want to actually stand your ground against this subversive Rainbow Skittles world, you can't just be rebellious for the sake of it, for the sake of power and women. You need the ought. You have to reestablish yourself, re-anchor yourself to the vertical axis. You need a worldview grounded in objective truth and the virtues of classical philosophy, or like I said, Christianity. Because if you don't have a firm teleology, a true north, you will eventually bend the knee when the pressure gets high. A man who stands for nothing will fall for anything.